Let's take a stroll through a day in the life during the memorial of the attack on New York City when the fractured Avengers weigh their options after their defeat at the hands of Ultimate Hulk. Is the team in over its head? Let's find out how everyone is handling their first big loss in the Ultimates number 7 from Marvel Comics. See you in 3. Welcome back to Comical Opinions. This is our review of the Ultimates number 7. My friend, let me ask you a question. Do you know what a soapbox is? I've used the phrase multiple times in the past. Still, if you're not familiar with the word, a soapbox is a crate people would place in a public setting to raise themselves above the crowd to deliver an impromptu speech, usually in the realm of politics or religion. When someone is quote-unquote standing on their soapbox, the phrase describes a negative situation because it means the creator raised himself up to lecture down to you, and the impromptu lecture is presented when you didn't ask for it. The Ultimate 7 is Dennis Camp's soapbox. But before we dig in, let's go through a brief recap. When last we left the Ultimate Avengers in the Ultimates number 6, the team assembled for their first big mission, a rescue of supers held by the Maker's Council. Their stealth mission failed when there were no hostages to be found. Instead, the Ultimate Hulk, who possesses the power of the Iron Fist, was waiting for them. The ensuing fight left several Avengers injured and Iron Lad dead. Maybe. And that brings us to the current issue. In the Ultimates number 7, the Ultimate Avengers lay low after their defeat at the hands of Ultimate Hulk. The issue follows each Avenger, either in pairs or solo, to find out what's occupying their time while they figure out how to proceed next. The issue takes place on the memorial anniversary of the attack on New York City, which took place all the way back in Ultimate Invasion number 4, as a smokescreen to turn public opinion against Iron Lad and away from the Maker and his council. The first scene begins with Steve Rogers, also known as Captain America, and Jim Hammond, the original Human Torch, heading to a real New York City landmark, McCorley's Old Ale House. Along the way, Jim encourages Steve to step into the leadership role now that Tony is gone, and we'll get to that in a second. When they reach the pub, they talk of changing times and punching Nazis, a lot of that talk. On the television playing inside the pub, Father Matt Murdock gives a speech at the memorial about the evils of holding on to an ideology that fosters hate. They then transition over to the memorial service itself, where we find Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne attending the memorial in person with their best efforts to blend into the crowd, which they do pretty well. Hank has growing reservations about his role on the team because people have died, directly or indirectly, through the team's actions. Okay, fine. Hank doesn't clarify whose death he's mourning, but Janet supports his feelings of grief as they continue to listen to Father Murdock's speech of love overcoming hate and the shouts from the crowd in response. Elsewhere, we catch up with Ultimate Hawkeye as he or she, I'm not quite sure, breaks into an Oscorp defense warehouse and blows it up. No explanation was given as to how Hawkeye found the warehouse, why Hawkeye blew it up, or how many innocent personnel died as a result of the explosion. It's a quick in and out type of scenario, but there's little context or rationale behind it. The issue then switches over to America Chavez as she intervenes between a group of protesters and armored police. America melts the armor on the police officers' bodies, trapping them and possibly killing them, but we're not quite sure. She then asks the protesters to peacefully sit in the grass while she explains the Ultimates are here for a better world as long as everyone believes in the same world she wants. She then magically teleports all the protesters back to their homes. The issue ends with a quick 2-page splash showing Sif and Thor traveling the 9 realms to gather an army to face Allfather Loki, and in another scene, Doom explaining why he can't send Ultimate She-Hulk back to her island without bringing down the wrath of Ultimate Hulk on her people. The last panel reveals what really became of Iron Lad, and it's about what you would expect. So that's the issue. It's just transitions in conversation. So let's talk about what's great and not great, starting with what's great about the Ultimates number 7. If you love slice of life soap opera storytelling with more than a sliver of soapbox preaching, this one's for you. Truly, this issue amounts to little more than a day in the life of each team member. So if that's your cup of tea, you're going to love it. If that's not your cup of tea, I think you're going to be in it for a tough time. But still, that's the positive, depending on your point of view. Alright, so let's talk about what's not great about the Ultimates number 7. It is super clear Dennis Camp is trying to make a point about some real-world socio-political scenario, even if the specifics are too vague to pin it down to any one thing. From the painful divide between American political parties to the ongoing conflicts in the Middle East and Eastern Europe, Camp is taking all the rhetoric associated with one side or the other, stuffing it into a blender labeled the Activist-O-Matic 3000, and dumping it on the page. If you don't like soapboxing, you are going to hate this issue. And if we place this issue in the context of the overall Ultimates line and all the Ultimates titles, it's consistent with practically every other Ultimates title since the line was relaunched last year, because the plot goes nowhere. We learn nothing about the Maker's Council that could help or hurt the heroes. There are no follow-ups to the fight against Ultimate Hulk. There is no progress towards the Maker's return in about a year in real time, so we have to wait another year for that event to occur. If you don't like slice of life storytelling or treading water, you again are not going to like this issue. It's not necessarily a problem to have some kind of soapboxing occurring within the context of a story if it makes sense within the scenario and it's plausible. But here, that's all you get. Slice of life, soapbox stories, a little bit of action, but essentially there's no story here. It's just, where are they now? You don't get the story for the money that you've paid. Let's switch gears for a second and talk about the art. God bless Juan Frigeri. He's giving you everything he's got with panel layouts that transition from one scene to the next with grace and fluidity. The majority of the issue depicts the players sitting or standing around and talking, so there's not really much to see, but Frigeri deserves a bonus for making a dialogue-heavy issue look good. To be clear, it's not walls of text, but effectively, people are just standing around chit-chatting, and that's not much to draw or make look interesting from a visual perspective. Final thoughts, what do we think about the Ultimates number 7? It presents a day in the life of the Ultimate Avengers after their defeat at the hands of the Ultimate Hulk. Dennis Camp's script goes nowhere and accomplishes nothing except to give a voice to the heroes to express their feelings, while Camp uses the backdrop of the New York City Memorial as an opportunity to preach about hate and intolerance, or something to that effect. If nothing else, Juan Frigeri's art looks fantastic, even if the issue is almost all dialogue. Therefore, the Ultimates number 7 earns a 5 out of 10. A slice of life comic may be fine for some in the right context, but in a superhero action comic, it's as boring and annoying as you'd expect. But what do you think? Does the lack of progress in the ultimate journey to the Maker bother you, or do you enjoy the lazy pace and the hyper over-focus on character and world building? Leave a thumbs up if you found this review helpful, and drop a comment below with which Ultimate title is your favorite since the relaunch. I'm betting most will say Ultimate Spider-Man. Also, remember to click on the link in the description to read the written review, check out the variant covers and preview pages, and buy this comic to help support the channel. Your support, of course, is greatly appreciated. So, thank you very much for joining, and stay tuned through the outro for more reviews just like this one.